has played a role. Probably on that same block, I would bet that there have been many times where people have been detained unjustifiably.
There were three different angles released where you can hear an officer asking Crum to back up several times. She's grabbed three times by her arm as Kinsey tries to pull her away, leading Crum to hit Detective Kinsey three times before he then punches her to the ground. This surrounded by a vocal crowd, some hitting and spitting at the officers.
Oftentimes, officers are sick and tired of people getting in their face, spitting at them, throwing things at them, and it leads to them making a decision that maybe they shouldn't have made. And I think that's what happened in this situation.
Before this situation, Detective Kinsey was celebrated by the NYPD. There have been two substantiated CCRB complaints against him, both nonviolent. Dr. Ray says true de-escalation of these incidents will only come with more transparency by police and by engaging the community to have a voice in oversight.
Own up to the part you did. Let's own up to the part that she did, and let's try to move past this together.
Darla Miles, Channel 7.
Well, I think when we look at the video, the biggest thing that stood out to me was how many officers were present at the scene and how it seemed that they did not secure the scene around the arrest. The second thing that I noticed is that at the time that the 19-year-old woman approached, the 22-year-old man was already apprehended. He did not seem to be posing a threat at that time. She came up trying to figure out what was going on, and the officer's actions seemed to be excessive given the situation. Well, look, I think distrust of law enforcement is a big factor here. If you notice, there were many bystanders, many people recording, many people trying to intervene. The young woman came up clearly thinking that the arrest or the detainment of the young man was unjustified, and those sort of things fuel these particular interactions. And the actions of the officer does not help that situation. Where again, they say that this was textbook, but based on what I know from training police officers in implicit bias and de-escalation, and also working with them in their training, what they are taught is to secure the perimeter. There were so many officers there that they could have had a perimeter there to allow for the safe arrest of that individual without allowing anyone else in. The other thing is that young woman did not necessarily pose a threat. And when I watched the body-worn camera video, I actually saw the officer push her first. Now, she did approach the situation, and a lot of that is fueled by distrust. Them saying, individuals in the community saying, this is an unjustified arrest. I want to know what's going on, because oftentimes people say, well, look, the key thing to do is to wait till after the arrest and then have your day in court. And obviously we know that people also don't trust other parts of the criminal justice system either. Thing though, of course, the officers arrested him because he was wanted for attempted murder. They say he had a weapon on him, a ghost gun, which obviously that is a huge problem. We have to do something about that. But at the time of that interaction when she approached, he was already detained. And if those other officers had formed a perimeter, she would not have even been able to get to the place that was right beside him. And so I think when we put it together, officers oftentimes try to put the blame on the perpetrators and on the suspects in these situations, but they have some blame to bear as well. Well, obviously, look, we never want to see officers being assaulted, have things thrown at them, being spit on. Those things are wrong no matter how you shape it up. At the same time, there is an institutional memory, what we call in sociology, a collective memory of distrust, that law enforcement has played a role. Probably on that same block, I would bet that there have been many times where people have been detained unjustifiably, and then later on either let go or arrested and charged for something they didn't do. So the reaction of the community is oftentimes that being built up. I think the other thing that the community oftentimes want to know is why. And rarely do officers give people that why. All they say is get back, be quiet, shut up, do what I'm telling you to do. And there is no sort of exchange there. Instead of saying, hey, look, this person is wanted for an arrest. Take a step back, please, and let us do our jobs. Now, that might have happened in this situation, but we know that oftentimes it does not. That oftentimes it's simply commands being given. But on that block right there, and on that street, there have been many times where black people have been profiled, where they have been beaten and harassed. And unfortunately, this is another incident that is added to that continuum.
How do we fix it?
Well, look, I think one of the ways that we fix it is by being more transparent about what's going on. Now, obviously, we know the body-worn camera footage has been released, but inferring about certain things that have happened isn't always the right thing to do when we don't have all the pieces of the information that were there, such as why the girlfriend was being called over there in the first place. I think the way that we fix it is much broader than just this interaction. And in New York, where we're starting to see the current mayor roll back some of the things that have been prevented, such as stop and frisk, where we know that was baked in racial disparities, where overwhelmingly a study in New York showed that of roughly 700,000 arrests, overwhelmingly over 90% of the time, the people were doing nothing wrong. We have to recognize that people are being profiled, that they are being stopped and frisked, that they are being harassed, that they are being beaten when they shouldn't be. And until we take that step, then we won't be able to heal the relationship between the community and law enforcement. Because at the end of the day, no one wants crime on their block. People want ghost guns off their block, no matter if you're in Harlem or no matter if you're in the suburbs in Long Island. Everyone wants to see their communities being safe. But we know that depending on where you are in the racial composition and class composition of your neighborhood, that dictates the type of policing that you experience. In the same way that a grandmother wants to have her home protected, she also wants her grandson to be able to walk home safely from the bus without being stopped by the police simply for being black.
That makes a lot of sense. So basically, the first move is on the part of the police department, not on us as a community. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. Look, the onus is on law enforcement. They are the ones that are trained. They are the ones that are held to a higher approach, not necessarily the community. Now, that doesn't mean that the community is let off the hook. I mean, if this young man did what they're claiming that he did, of course he should have been arrested. That happened. The police officers are getting him off of the street. They're getting that gun off of the street. That is what's supposed to happen. But the excessive use of force is where things go a little bit too far. And instead of simply hiding behind policy saying, well, we did what policy stated, well, maybe we need to change some of the policies and continue to do so to ensure that officers are acting in alignment with what the community wants.
Yeah. Was there a better way for the community to approach this situation?
The community, it is the legal right for people to record. And we know that video helps with this situation and other situations. So people should turn over the video that they actually have that show what happened before, that paint a broader picture for what's going on. The other part of it is that we really need to strengthen community oversight boards. We need to have community oversight boards that can take that information and actually intervene. We see that in Nashville, for example, where their community oversight board actually has votes on the police misconduct board. That's something Mayor Adams should really look into. When you're really for the community, you want to include the community. And that means letting them in on some of the decisions that are made to hold officers accountable. And again, officers have to be above reproach. Simply because someone does something to you does not give you the right to do